Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report and the illustrious piercing the arrows of truth into the mass of disinformation there, and blogging, of course, on europebusiness.blogspot.com. That's business with one S. Tim, I think the situation is, it's interesting. We had heard from his website, Vic Mord, from Avi Lipkin, who I've known for about 20 years now. And Avi, of course, is an Israeli. He supports Christianity and Christian nations. And he travels around to a lot of pastors. One thing I'm surprised is he's not become a Messianic Christian himself, having seen the real consequences that if you have a real Christian nation, you don't have this chaos. And there's going to be repentance in America, especially after the Muslim president we have right now, which is a Sunni Muslim, Obama. We know he's a puppet for the Saudi Arabians. We know they're pouring in trillions of dollars into America to pump up the stock market and do everything else. And we know that the Sunni support of ISIS is biting them themselves. They're complaining now in Saudi Arabia because ISIS is saying that they're going to go and kill the king of Saudi Arabia and they're going to do all these other things. And the Muslims...
I don't believe any of that, by the way. Go ahead.
These are not just... there's factions, just like in any faction, just like in Israel. There's factions that support ISIS, and there's factions that are terrified for them. It's like once you unleash these kind of forces, it's pretty hard to control it. Same way as it was in our government, there's only a few rogue elements that did 9/11. There's a lot of good people, even in the CIA, FBI, and other agencies, that are freaked out by what they see going on, and they know that there's evil elements that want to maintain the chaos. And they're not all bad people, even billionaires.
Well,
in fact,
I agree.
We have rich people that listen to this program, and
it's difficult for people like that to they try to do some good, and they realize that the danger that they're in, right? Because they see it from the inside.
Right. We have billionaires and millionaires that listen to the program, and they basically say, we know this is what's going on. We see the crazies with the levers of power, and they have a closer view of how nuts it is at the top. But it's only a few people who have seized the levers of power. They're not in absolute control by any means. So
no, and many of the stunts they try to pull don't work. For instance, they spent a couple of years and a lot of money setting up the so-called massacre at a kindergarten a week and a half before Christmas, over a year and a half ago, Sandy Hook massacre. It really didn't take place. The whole thing was a scam. But what it was designed to do is to so shock the nation that we were going to agree to give up our rights to bear arms. And it did just the opposite. Everybody rushed out to buy guns and ammunition. And I literally, I couldn't find 12-gauge shotgun shells. I mean, everything was gone. The shells were stripped. And, a lot of brilliant people, or people at least that think they're very brilliant, thought that little false flag scam up, and it failed because they're out of touch with humanity, they're out of touch with Americans, they're out of touch with reality, and they've gone so far down
they're not really smart
rabbit hole that
they've convinced themselves because they can absorb and regurgitate information among their little circles. They're not bright people. These are people who are pseudo-bright. They're actually subnormal, evil morons. And they actually, if they're in contact with reality, realize what they're doing is suicidally stupid because they underestimate the power and intellect and the determination of the average population. The IQ gap between the average...
If you are a follower of Satan, you're a follower, as you say, not Lucifer or Lucifer, the ultimate, most pathetic loser in all of God's creation.
I call him, although he was, quote, the most brilliant, beautiful, created creature in the universe, he has become, I call, Lucifer. The biggest loser, the most idiotic, coming against the creator of the universe that's beyond space-time is not just stupid, it's suicidally insane.
Yeah, and if you follow him, how smart are you? I don't care what your IQ is, how many PhDs or whatever you've got. How smart are you really? Or how many billions or trillions of dollars you have in the bank? Or how long your line of billionaires, how many generations it goes back? How smart are you really? Because eternity is a very long time to spend in hell.
Exactly, yeah. It's important for people to understand what's really going on, too. Because when people give us...
I was up late last night. I was about to go to bed, and I did one final last check of things, and the news just started to come out about the Israeli Security Cabinet, or actually War Cabinet, approved this ceasefire. And so I stayed up to 3 o'clock doing a couple updates and getting the story out. And I was very skeptical of it. For one thing, they accepted the ceasefire after Hamas had already rejected it. Secondly, you have to understand that the field marshal who was elected president after they kicked the last one out in Egypt has a Jewish background, and the Egyptians are very tied to Israel. And there was a PR stunt set up by Netanyahu to try to make him look like he wants peace. In reality, just the opposite is true. A key thing, and this is the area to watch. Israel did another air raid on the Golan Heights and killed 4 Syrians. That's the important area to watch, because Israel wants to expand this war into Lebanon, into Syria, into Iraq, and Iran, and it wants to take on Hamas. The goal of Netanyahu and the war hawk nuts in his cabinet is to have a general Middle Eastern war, and that war could become the Third World War. The reason that you have this nightmare in the Ukraine is to try to tie down Russian forces in a battle in and over the Ukraine, possibly with NATO, so that they can't intervene to stop such a war, which they've done twice now. And everything is interconnected. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. By the way, this thing in Gaza, it's just getting warmed up. It's still early stages. The level of killing by the Israelis is going to increase dramatically. Most of the people that are being killed are civilians, men, women, and children. But you haven't seen anything really heavy thrown at Israel yet. I don't believe, by the way, all the reports coming out of Israel. I think they're taking many more casualties than are being reported. But if Hamas gets involved and the Syrians get involved, then it's going to be a very different situation, because they have POR explosives, they have radiological weapons, and I don't believe for a minute that the Syrians shipped all their chemical weapons out. I just don't buy it. In any case, the Iranians have a large supply, and they both have extensive biological weapons, as do the Israelis.
Well, here, let me just Tim, let me give you an analysis of what I've pieced together as the things that are firing this off right now. I found out, and you probably know this too, that ISIS, this literally is not by surprise they call it that, ISIS, like the ancient, goddess.
There's
right. That apparently there's a faction of ISIS.
Evil spiritual connection with that name. Go ahead.
Right. They had apparently ISIS killed these 3 teenager boys. One of them actually telephoned, telling me he was in trouble, and that there were in the background these Arab ISIS terrorists. Killed them, and of course they're not.
They were, but there was also Hebrew talking in the background.
No, let me finish. Tim, don't interrupt me. Tim, don't interrupt me. Tim, don't interrupt me. Just let me finish.
Okay.
Well, I have several. It took me a while to kind of corroborate this before I actually make the statement. So we know ISIS did this. I have several corroborations now. And what was going on behind the scenes is ISIS is supported by America, which is crazy now. And people say, why would they do that? They gave 74 Stinger missiles 2 weeks ago to ISIS, which are going to battle against the guy that we put in, Maliki, who happens to be Shiite, now getting jets not only from Russia, but from Iran, the old Saddam Hussein James. So these teenagers died at the hands of ISIS, who, by the way, they claimed it later, so it's not just like we just guessed that. So ISIS did it, and what's happening is now all these rockets are coming in at Dimona and elsewhere, and if they ever start shooting real serious rockets, chemical, biological, fuel, air bombs, etc., there's going to be a lot of Israeli dead. Now, right now, Iron Dome and the Patriot 2 system are stopping them, but if they ever get a large barrage... Well, Tim, this is a very hot topic, and I did get a caller in California. I'm just going to give his first name. His name is Aaron, and, of course, this is how things work here, the Nutrimedical Report. You have to be extremely specific about the question you want to make a statement of or the statement you're going to make. It can be a sentence or 2 sentences, but you got to tell the board op. If you can't be specific, you're not getting on air. Because I'm not leaving uncontrolled callers just kind of blasting on the air or saying things that are, either ad hominem attacks or other things. We need to be specific. And I'm not choosing sides here. Because I think what we have is a situation. We had Avi Lipkin on the first hour. We have people like yourself, Tim, that tend to think that the majority of crimes are against the Gazans. I think we actually, the way my balance, do you remember now, I have some Hebrew background myself and my family on my mother's side are from Beirut, Lebanon. Just going back a couple generations. So I can tell you, I have an organic understanding of the Middle East. And here's the situation I see. We see 2 bad groups. 1,000 years ago, the Druze split off from Shiite Islam, and they're terrorists, and they were killing so many people, Christian Maronites. My great-grandfather migrated from Beirut, Lebanon, to America, to North America. And that's why they came here. Because of the Druze, which are Shiite Muslims. And they were living in a little town of Bishkent outside Beirut. These are anciently Cohens, which are descended from Moses, that married the Medians, the daughter of the Medes, and took on the tribal name of the Medians, so their family name was Naima, N-E-I-M-A, Naima. That's my mother's maiden name. So what we have to understand here is we have 2 bad guys. We've got crazy Islam and crazy, aggressive, super aggressive Israel. And Israel, by the way, although they're backed up by America to some extent, except for this president who's two-faced, right? We have a situation where America is supporting ISIS, which we have very good proof that they're the ones that killed these teenagers and started this whole conflict really going. Now, if the Hamas and these rocket people, and by the way, Hezbollah claims they did not, and again, remember, if they did it, they'd claim they did not kill these teenagers. They know it was ISIS, okay? Once things got rocking and rolling, Hamas has been firing off rockets, and if they ever start a real barrage of heavy rockets like Fuller and other ones, the Israelis can't defend themselves. They could put up as many of their Iron Dome and other anti-missile systems. They'll be easily overwhelmed. And then we're going to see a lot of dead Jews and a lot of dead Christians, a lot of just agnostics.
Well, I know going nuclear.
On the ground.
But that's... Netanyahu wants to expand it. That's
well, he's learned the old Israeli principle, which, unfortunately, to some extent, I tend to agree with him on this, that when someone's planning a war against you, you strike their planes by bombing the runways so they can't get off the ground, and then you bomb the planes so they never get in the air. And I think, unfortunately, the events are being propelled forward to do this rather than to get peace. Now, to be honest with you, the best way to have peace is to disarm totally the Muslim countries and to have America annex Israel so it becomes another state. And I think some of the surrounding territory needs to be annexed by Israel to make a greater Israel, to allow people to migrate there. Because, to be honest with you, I think Israel will be a safer place than America the way that Obama is destroying this country and our liberty. I think that the Israelis, they don't have the same kinds of stupid policies dealing with airport security and so on that we do here, which is why it's not surprising that we're going to have terrorism like 9/11, because we allow it. We don't have proper security against nuclear weapons that come across our border from Freeport, Bahamas, or across the Mexican border. So all the people, including Dick Cheney, are saying you're going to have a bigger event than 9/11, which is a nuclear event. You're going to have these happen. Even if we aren't in control, we've given the materials and the access, and we've had no security to stop nuclear material from coming across the border, biological weapons, chemical weapons, or guys from Iran or the Middle East where the surge is coming from.
How can you stop it when the border's wide open?
Exactly, well, it's on purpose.
Now,
Obama is on purpose.
If Grandma flies in from England or Europe or wherever, they'll strip search her. But the southern border is just literally wide open, and you not only have 50,000 or so illegal aliens just in Texas a month coming across, but who knows what they're bringing with them? And we have an army. Texas has an army. You know that worthless governor they've got. He raised some hell with Obama for the PR. But he has the Army, and he has the 3-pronged military forces under his command. The Texas Army National Guard, the Texas Air National Guard, and the Texas State Guard. And the Texas State Guard is the largest state defense force in the country. It can't be called up by the president, and it has a Marine, Air Force, and a Army element, plus a large, they call them Texas Medical Rangers, a large medical element. And he can, it's not a matter of money, you know. He can put there's over 1,000 people there, but he can quickly deputize volunteers and farmer policemen and firemen.
Oh, he can amplify that.
And put 10,000 Texans on the border and stop it. He won't do it. We have a failure of our political class because they're so corrupted.
Well, now, why do you think that Perry won't do it? Because his own people are going to roast him if he doesn't. At some point, now, this surge, by the way, is not trickling down. It's building. And so the numbers are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I believe in humanitarian refugees getting across. So we talked about this in the first hour. And by the way, the Pope has made a statement. We should have open arms and accept the refugees.
Yeah. Well, the Pope makes a lot of statements, including that 2% of the priests are pedophiles, and they could end celibacy, but they'll have to think about it for a lot longer. You know, leaders, including popes, not by what they say, but by what they do.
Exactly.
And,
here's my
Obama
point.
By what he says, he's the most wonderful president we've ever had. If you judge him by what he does, you'll say, well, this is the worst bum of many bums recently, but this guy's the worst. You know, Perry could do something. I think, you know, he's been under a lot of pressure from wealthy Texans that have given a lot of money to him, and basically it goes like this. They call him up and say, boy, what the hell's going on? You letting all these people come across the border? I gave you a lot of money. What's the matter with you? And, you know, it's, they're going to have to put him under, because the globalists that want this to happen, and the Zionists, because most of the Zionist organizations are behind
I think
they have more power than the people, but the people are going to have to step up. There are many of us,
Tim,
very few of them.
Tim, here's the situation. Bureau of Land Management found out in Nevada how that was going to happen a few months ago in terms of the Bureau of Land Management and their little games. I don't think that if the Texas government doesn't do anything and the surge continues in the next, say, 60 days, you're going to see Texans themselves and their own Texas militia just take over. And then, of course, if the Texas government tries to block it or do anything, things are going to get real ugly. And, of course, it'll also get real dangerous for Mr. Perry because they'll realize what a turncoat he is, just like Mr. Boehner, the so-called Republican that should be doing his job, putting articles of impeachment forward and getting this going to get rid of Obama. No.
He says, no, we're not going to impeach him. Why not?
Yeah, tell me why. Why? Because he's another turncoat coward, and he's not doing his job. That's what the problem is.
They own him.
They probably got video of him doing something illegal to an underage person.
Yeah, right.
Just apropos of that call, because I'm going to just make some assumptions as to what kind of comments were made. John Baird, he's a Canadian foreign minister, made a statement condemning Hamas, who's rejecting the ceasefire with Israel. Israel came to a ceasefire, so did, why doesn't Hamas? Because Hamas has claimed that they can destroy Israel, and by the way, they can. But, by the way, they'll also be nuked. I mean, you know, you start firing lots of fuel air bombs and start killing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Israelis, bye-bye Gaza, and millions of Gazans will be vaporized into an atomic cloud.
Well,
and it won't just
that's been my point for quite some time about all of this. And it's a point that I try to make to Israelis. Look, yes, you have superior military technology, and you can kill all the enemies, Iranians and Arabs that surround you, but you'll still be dead. Who won that?
I don't think the Israelis have got it in their thick skulls that despite the fact that they can destroy Tehran, they can destroy the Bushehr reactor, they can destroy Syria, they can lure every Muslim country all the way to Malaysia and turn it into an obsidian glass desert. But they don't realize they'll also be all dead, except if they're in an underground bunker.
Well, you know, you eventually have to come out, or air has to go in, and the HEPA filters eventually get clogged. And that's not a scenario you want to happen. That's what you want to avoid. That's the nightmare from hell that you want to avoid. And there's always been this fixation going back to the end of the First World War about 6 million Jews being killed. And there's 6 million Jews now living in Israel, and they may all get killed if they're not careful with this insanity.
Well, the total population of Israel now is around 8 million. That's what the total is now.
6 million are Jews. The rest are
6 million. There are others, exactly, including workers. But here's the situation. When he talked about this to Avi Lipkin, he said the temple cannot be built until the Kaaba, which is the black stone in Mecca, is destroyed and Islam is destroyed, etc. I don't believe that. In fact, it's the exact opposite. If you read the Bible accurately, what is going to happen is they just discovered and have the red heifer. I think they shipped it from Texas to the Temple Foundation. I got an article shipped to me. It was very accurate. That was the last straw. And the red heifer, by the way, if it had 2 black hairs, it could not qualify as a red heifer. It had to be a live red heifer. It was never shackled, never, a whole long series of things that were by rabbinic law necessary. And then the ashes of the red heifer were necessary to mix with the kalal, which they discovered at the Dead Sea, to be able to sanctify the Temple Mount on Sukkot after a Shemitah year. And literally the first day of that it could happen is September 28th, 2015. That's the first day. By rabbinic law. I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but that's the first day it could happen. And the problem is we're also right now having these blood moons. I think that the temple doesn't even have to be a temple. It could be a tabernacle of Moses. It could be something that looks like a synagogue, because it could be beside the Mosque of Omar, because what the Pope is trying to do is say, we're all, kumbaya, let's all live together. Shore up the supports for the Temple Mount, have a mosque, which they built, by the way, underground inside the Temple Mount, which the Muslims have already done. The Mosque of Omar, which used to be where the Church of St. Catherine's was during the Templars, was taken over by the Muslims, and they put up this dome of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is a horrendous monument, basically, with statements against Jesus Christ. In fact, I remember talking to Nicolas Saliba, who was actually the stonemason rebuilding those areas around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Christian church called the Russian Orthodox Church, was on the Mount of Olives, and specifically brought me to these places, and you could see the actual inscription in Arabic that said Jesus Christ is an illegitimate son of a Roman soldier, and he's a quote, illegitimate bastard. I mean, this is said right in Arabic, right around the stone of Abraham, which the Al-Aqsa Mosque is supposedly built over.
Both the Muslims and some of the more radical Jews both say obscenities like that.
Right, okay, but these obscenities are all written in Arabic around the stone. Of course, the Jews say the same. They say that Jesus is boiling in excrement and living in hell forever and all this stuff. I mean, this is not pleasant. I know they're wrong, and the problem is, you see, that everybody thinks, well, no, we're of the same group as the current people called Israeli Jews. No, we're not. They're not like ancient Hebrews at all. These people are not even a faint shadow of what the ancient Hebrews were that were Torah Jews. It's a disturbing fact, but it's a fact.
Most of them don't have the DNA.
Well, it's not even DNA. I mean, I wouldn't care about their DNA. I don't care if they're Japanese or Mongolian. It's the spiritual DNA that happens. Jesus said, God said himself that I will raise up stones and turn them into my people. Remember, he was negotiating with Moses because he was so ticked off them sacrificing to the golden calf, which, by the way, was around the 9th of Av where that happened. At the same time, the evil report came with Joshua, which is why they were cast to the land for a long time. And in that 40 years, the only 2 adults that literally entered the land were Joshua and Caleb, the adults that had the positive report. All the other adults died, and only their children entered the Holy Land. So that gives you an idea just how ticked God was at the adults. They weren't exactly
I think God is very upset with a lot of what's happening in the world today, and in the Middle East. Thank goodness He is a good and kind God. But He's also a just God, and when God gets mad, look out.
Well, I see. They say take the splinter from your own eye. How about take the Douglas fir from your own eye? And I'm not just talking about one group of religions or the other. Look at the Vatican. Look at the Muslims. Look at the Sabbatean Jews. Look at the globalists, which are secular agnostic Satanists. And then if we get real Christians, which we are, saying real Christians, we point out the facts, and everybody says, oh, you can't say that about their religion. They have a right to believe in their religion. No, their religion wants to control and destroy us. You can't accept that. You can't accept that there are going to be a bunch of globalists who want to get rid of 95% of the population. Or they set up these dialectics of conflict so they can get rid of all of us. They can have the Jews kill the Iranians kill the Jews, the Russians kill the Americans. I mean, the globalists set it up so the Russia was...
It's all about a blood orgy, which is a very satanic thing.
It's a ceremony. And that's why even Russia, who would have been a natural ally of America, because it was during the American Revolution...
in
the Civil War, became a natural enemy after the Second World War when they actually, beat Germany in the Eastern Front. And that's where most of the war actually happened, is on the Eastern Front. I mean, the Russians lost an unbelievable amount of people.
The Germans, the Russians, literally made a big impact on the German population. You've had 3 giant wars in Europe in about 150, 175 years. Started out with the Napoleonic Wars, with the Rothschilds set up the French Revolution and set up the Napoleonic Wars. And then you had the First World War and the Second World War. And the Rothschilds and the global banking cartel was right there in the center of all of it. Trotsky, who ran the Red Army, was in charge of the multiple hit teams that ended up killing the Austrian Archduke and the spark that caused World War I, after they had spent a couple decades setting all the alliances up, getting everything ready for it. You have people that profit. Follow the money is what I always say.
Right.
That profit from wars, profit from killing, and because of their demonic nature, they want the killing, they want the hurt, they want the destruction. And these are people that all of us, the human race, have allowed the worst to percolate to the top, to rule over us. You look at the Federal Reserve System. It's unconstitutional, it's illegal, and when we want to borrow money, we say to these European bankers, we need another $1 trillion. They say, boop, good. We just created it out of thin air. Now, by the way, you're going to have to pay us back the principal and compound interest for the next, several decades.
Yeah, and the thing is, after they do that, by the way, when they're printing money out of thin air, they're taking it out of your future, out of your pension funds, out of your bank account, the value of your currency, out of your hide.
Can you imagine what we'd have in this country if we hadn't had all these wars and nonsense?
Well, it requires people to have enough guts to throw off the bonds of evil, and it doesn't matter what religious face it puts on itself, it's just evil. Come back, and Tim, on the break we mentioned something. You're a history professor, and we talked about prehistory. It's my thesis that if you look at genetics, and people need to understand this, and I'm just going to give a little story. One of my colleagues, because I was a member of Phi Rho Sigma, and I was one of the guys who was tapped in by the Dean of Medicine and the head of hematology and oncology. His name is Dr. Ormo Hain. He's a hematologist at Phi Rho Sigma. He told me back in 1974 that, hey, you're one of our brighter medical students. I'm going to tell you the truth. Because I was doing research at the time for the head of rheumatology, Dr. Woodbury, and I was analyzing 22,000 cases and working in the Synovia Analysis Immunology Lab. And he said, Bill, I'd really be interested in you coming in and doing internal medicine hematology, but I want to tell you a few facts. And of course, he said, if you actually look at pigs and you look at their genetics, major and minor subgroups of their blood group types, you'll actually find their histocompatibility locus antigens, HLA, and their blood groups, they're identical to human. In many of the different subgroups, I said, what? I said, that doesn't make sense. I said, they're not, monkeys or chimpanzees. He said, but monkeys and chimpanzees don't have human pattern, HLA or blood group types. But said pigs do. And I said, well, why is that? He said, because, this is the big one, pigs are a hybrid, an ancient hybrid that's proper, a totally different recombinant genetically between wild boars and humans, created by an ancient civilization that we know as the Atlanteans, or the ones before Atlantis. They were used in their temples and sacrificed in place of humans.
And that may be something to do with the biblical prohibition.
That's why it's in the book of Jasher. That's why the book of Jasher is referred by even by James, the brother of Jesus, and by all the prohibition, why the original flood occurred, because of the genetic engineering was going on. We're not talking about itty-bitty, stupid genetic engineering where you take a gene cassette and fire a gene in. We found recently doing genetic analysis trying to prove crops of spelt, which is a crop that's much more ancient than wheat. spelt as genetically engineered. It was, and it's not unstable like the stupid genetic engineering that makes GMOs have unstable plasmids from moths jump around inside your genes and go crazy like a man with an axe inside your chromosomes. We're talking about stable genetic, highly engineered.
We're early stage in genetic engineering.
Right, so we're talking about much more advanced than what we have now. Far more advanced. And I'm going to state this as an engineering fact from talking to lots of people over decades. We could not today build the pyramids. It was built by technology well beyond the Egyptians or well beyond us today. We couldn't do it to the tolerance of the rocks, the angles.
The question is, what were the pyramids built for? And there's serious doubt that they were ever really built as tombs. They may have been built as a type of energy generator. But here's the thing, and I teach this, and I have to be careful when I teach because there's so much speculation.
Well, and some things aren't speculation.
At a minimum, according to most stuff you read today, most experts, the human race, that is modern human beings, Homo sapiens subspecies sapien, has been around for about 200, maybe 250,000 years.
Now, the number I have is about double that. It's at least 450 to 500,000.
Okay, but you just stay within that the acceptable box for a second. Okay, if you stay within that acceptable box for 200 or so thousand years, and the acceptable theory of history is only in the last 10,000 or so years did mankind begin to crawl out of the caves and begin to do something. And
not likely.
Our brains were the same and so forth. And quite frankly, I think that's illogical.
That's ridiculous. Well, first off, they've discovered artifacts in South Africa and elsewhere that you can do not only nuclear dating, but carbon dating and other dating technologies. And you can see that human civilization has probably been around, advanced civilization, for at least 75 to 150,000 years. And there's been previous conflicts and wars and catastrophes, both natural and galactic catastrophes like a gamma burst or a nuclear war. Like one of my chemists back in 1972 went with a panel of chemical and nuclear scientists to northwest India and discovered that they had nuclei, and he wasn't religious, proving that it couldn't be caused by a meteor or comet or space-based event. It had to occur by a nuclear explosion. And if you look at the Vimana and the ancient documents, there's tons of proof that these people were not stupid. They had advanced cultures that developed Vimanas, flying machines.
Sanskrit writings, which are among the earliest writings that exist, which were taken from far older writings, refer to flying machines, refer to a wide variety of technologies that are at least as great, if not greater, than what we have now. And they refer to a horrific war that sounds very much like a nuclear war.
Which is what we're heading for now. This reminds me of the echoes of that miniseries that was out, about 5, 7, 10 years ago, called Battlestar Galactica. And the statement in the Battlestar was that this has happened before to mankind and will happen again. We don't even know if human beings were actually originated on this planet or we came from somewhere else. Because if you actually look at our genetics, there's actually 23 genes in humans. They're called foreign DNA or alien DNA. The actual genetic term is called alien, 23 genes that don't occur in any other primate or any other organism on the planet. 23 genes. And then when you look at human beings, you say, and even if you look at all of the primates, they have what's called a centric centromere, but not an acentric centromere. If you move the centromere, the animal doesn't even get to be an embryo. So we're not even, although human beings look like primates, we're not. Okay? So there's a template there. The chromosome number is completely different. I mean, human beings, for example, if you actually try to equalize the number of chromosomes, you have to fuse the third and fifth chromosome to look at the genetics. Even the position of the genes are on different chromosome numbers. It doesn't make sense. So,
a lot of people say, oh, well, where's the evidence that we existed? Well, you have to remember, the last ice age, New York City had 2 miles of solid ice above it. Indianapolis had 1 mile of solid ice for a very, very long time.
Well, it's interesting.
And when it melted, anything that was there, gone.
Well, by the way, just before that Younger Dryas period, which is around 13,000 years ago, which is 1,000 years of a returned ice age, there was evidence of that nuclear war I mentioned, that last nuclear war. So in other words, a lot of people say, well, you can't get a nuclear winter. Well, you may not just get a dust cloud like the first cosmos.
We're seeing, and until for sure, you don't know, but we're seeing evidence of global climatic change. Now, I don't buy into the global warming nonsense.
No.
And certain things have caused it, like the death of the loop current and so forth. But we're seeing a cooling in lots of places across the world, and right now in the Midwest, it's beautiful day for July. It's so abnormal. It's going to be 50-something tonight. But we're seeing a global cooling, and if you have, not even World War III, but a major regional war that goes nuclear, like between India and Pakistan or the Middle East, or a combination thereof, and without nuking the United States, without nuking Canada, without nuking Europe, the fallout and the dust that would be put into the sky from just a few hundred nukes going off in a region could well push us into an all-out ice age.
Well, that's one of the theories, but you have some other factors that are going in. Number one, nuclear warfare will destroy the ozone layer. So it'll kill all the benthic layer of the oceans, it'll stop the carbon-oxygen cycle, and it can cause a major collapse in the biosphere. And when you combine that with the fact that now the magnetic field is dropping not 5% per 100 years, which is what they calculated before, but 5% per decade, we're heading toward a converging cataclysm here of geopolitical, financial, biological disasters. At the same time, human race is actually approaching what I call the biosingularity, where human lifespan can literally be limitless. And we're not talking about fusing with the machines and becoming like cybernetically implanting brain chips and so on. We're talking about ways of, because people are like Christmas toys. We have programs that actually make sure that at a certain point, now you turn diabetic, now you get hypertensive, now you get cancer, now you get this and that. In actual fact, we know these are all genetic programs, just like a program senescence of a teddy bear where the right arm pulls off just a month before Christmas. So you get a new teddy bear.
Yeah, right. Well, but you're totally correct. Of course, you're a physician. You know all this stuff inside and out. But you're right. We are programmed to die. You are not programmed to live 200 years or 300 years or 400 years.
Yeah, but it's only a program.
You were at one point in time.
Well, that's why the patriarchs did live that, and that's why at some point we can get into that program and we can change the program so you can live well and long and healthy
through the next few years.
Exactly. Right now we're going through a minefield of evil in every direction, so don't try to choose good guys and bad guys. How about bad guys and badder guys?
And the person you should choose is God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and as you pray, you realize that we need to pray for the peace of America and the world. It'll only happen when we have a real revival here in America and bring the truth to the people, not only of Gaza, but of Israel and of Islam, that the only way of peace is when the Prince of Peace arrives in our hearts first and our actions, and we have to be not gutless when we deal with the truth, no matter how shocking it is to us. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Hope you're out listening there. Take care, take action. Back tomorrow with Harley Schlanger.